Hi there folks. So in continuation of yesterday's video, I showed you this bed here with the net where we seeded our pea plants and they are just germinating currently. A few greens seen here. We're expecting some rain today, so it will be good because the surface of the soil is rather dry now. But there's ample moisture below because of our clay soil. But what I wanted to talk about a bit is I showed you yesterday in the video how the unmulched soil in early spring compared to the mulched part of the bed is much warmer, and it gets even warmer quicker with the high temperatures and sunny days which are ahead of us with the coming of the spring. So it's beneficial in our climate to have the soil unmulched for a period of time in early spring, which allows direct seeded plants to germinate. Of course, we can do a seed starting for most of those things, including peas, but this is too much work for me. We don't usually have the time available for that. And even if we do that, we will have to plant through the mulch, which means parting the mulch and planting in the soil, and this is really cold to the touch while this is warm. So even in that scenario, the plant will be put to grow in very different conditions because the seedling trays will get warm quicker, and suddenly they will be planted in this very cold soil. So certainly there will be some type of transplant shock because of the changing conditions. So this is the reason why we left this part of the bed unmulched. And then I talked about a bit those little seedlings which are everywhere. This is red orange, which will be growing as a living mulch, and this is what works very nice in our garden. We try to grow as much as possible living mulch plants. Red orange and amaranth are just two of those, and I wanted to quickly show you two other plants, or maybe a few other plants which are useful in the same way in the garden. So even here in the bed you can see several of those clumps showing. This is Swiss chard. Here it's called mangold, and I think it's mangold in German probably. And here as well, poking through the mulch. Those plants we encourage to self-seed, and they propagate all through the bed. Of course, you can easily weed them, and the tiny baby seedlings which germinate in spring are great for direct eating in salads or in stir fries, so free greens. But also you can see that they're very resilient, very sturdy. They grow well through the mulch, and they form this nice thick rosette of leaves which covers the soil, which you can harvest continuously in the season by just picking the leaves which you want, and you can use that as a spinach in an omelette or in a stew or in a stir fry or in a green filling banita. So this is just one of their many facets. And here is another bed which has this Swiss chard growing prolifically in many locations. It usually self-seeds now, but in the early days of our garden we taught our daughter, which was maybe 3 years old at that time, a simple funny trick. When the Swiss chard makes a flower stem, it makes this long tall stalk with the seeds on top, which you can easily get with your fingers, and then you get those little like pellets of seeds, and we just thought as a game to throw them around all around the garden as fireworks. So most of the freely growing Swiss chard here in the garden is a result of a child's play with one single summer, and we're talking now hundreds and hundreds of plants. And one of the other benefits of especially for our soil of the Swiss chart, is that if I want to plant something here and this Swiss chart is in a way, I can try and uproot that. And you can see that it has this thick white carrot-like taproot growing deeper into the soil. I cut it here just so I can remove the plant. By doing this, I free up space for the plant which I'll be putting, but in the same time I don't kill the Swiss chard because it will regrow from the root. And also, just from this tiny space here which I freed by removing one single plant, you can see how much soil life activity there is. I am at the 6th worms now. Worm, here it is. Yeah, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 earthworms feeding off the dying biomass of the roots of this plant. There is some more hiding here in the base of the plant. The lower leaves, they continually die and rot. You can see this has started here. The swags and other soil life come and start to decompose those, and the worms, they feed after that from the biomass. And if you sometimes just cut the rosette at the top, the root dies, and this root goes down into the soil for sometimes as much as 1.5 meters. So what you get is basically a pocket of manure for the soil, because the dying root will attract all the soil life and they will decompose it, and you'll get like this drainage channel deep into the soil, which is great for our clay soil. It improves soil water retention and infiltration, and it also feeds the soil continuously. So if the plant lives, you get the harvest of the leaves, you get the soil life benefit, and if it dies, you get the drainage benefit and the soil feed as well. You can see here we have some garlic germinating. This was the garlic bed last year, and then it was brassicas like this one, but those were all chomped down by the neighbor's cows, so no brassicas were harvested off here. A few kale plants survived back there, and maybe we'll get some of those, we'll see. But during the winter I have added a bucket of the ash from the fireplace along with some biochar, so this will be slowly integrated into the soil with the spring rains and the soil life, and it will serve as a reservoir of nutrients for the years to come. Another interesting aspect here is that you can see those stems. Those are the stems of the brassicas which were planted here. We don't remove them in fall, we just cut the heads and leave the roots to rot. And leaving them to rot in the ground allows for feeding the soil microorganisms during the winter and early spring, and even in the fall, depending on the temperatures. If the soil is not frozen, the life keeps moving, eating and propagating. So it's always beneficial if you have the ability and the chance and your context allows it to leave the roots of the plants and remove them as late as possible, ideally in the moment in which you are seeding the bed or if you're planting a new transplants. One other thing I wanted to show you here is to take note of the different coloration of the leaves. For example, this Swiss chard is very light with almost white veins in the leaves, and this one is really dark green with much thicker, sturdier leaves, and this one has red veins in the green leaves. This one has a bit of a curly leaf. So all those charts seed propagated, open pollinated, so in time we get more and more genetic diversity, and we help that along by gradually removing the ones which we don't like, which we don't perform well, grow slowly, or most eaten by snails, or they have a bitter taste to the leaves or some other problem, and slowly we are selecting for the best growing, best performing, best tasting Swiss chard in the garden. Another plant which I wanted to show you, which is great for our type of climate, early spring to mid-spring ground cover, is this little unassuming green. This is what it's known in Europe as corn salad or feld salad, Valerianello locusta, also known as mache in some places. This is a very nice tasting green. It has slightly nutty flavor to it, a bit like lettuce but also a bit like spinach, without overpowering taste. It self-seeds. We're trying to get it established, and I'm happy to see it growing here through the mulch in this bed. Some garlic also sprouted here, which is great. We'll be harvesting that. And it even managed to grow here in the side of the bed where the soil is much more compacted. I stepped on that, so it's a bit damaged. But those plants can be easily harvested by uprooting or by cutting. They make a nice rosette, and they start to flower usually before anything else is established. So it works very nice with a bed which you plant peppers or tomatoes or other heat-loving crops in our climate, which usually happens in mid-May. And in time I hope to see more and more of that feld salad growing here in the pathways, in the beds, and all around in the garden. And this is another plant which we are trialing right now. This is creeping thyme as a perennial ground cover. It grew from a tiny plant in just 2 years. You can see that the back here started to die off, even though there are some green tips, but I'll be probably cutting this. You can see that underneath almost nothing grows. This has been deliberately not weeded to see how it performs, and also it has some stiff competition in this bed from wild strawberries. This is the growth tip, and you can generally judge the direction in which it is crawling by the deader parts in the back and the greener in the front. So it's definitely moving that way towards the rhubarb plant. So we will be cutting and propagating this in several beds to see how it will go, but generally underneath just a few bits of couch grass, and in the height of summer they die off. Even the wild strawberries struggle to grow through the creeping thyme. I'm hoping that in several years we'll have a whole bed of that, and we can direct transplant tomatoes and peppers and other annuals to see how will they grow. And another plant which we're using for the same purpose is the borage plant. You can see here how many dozens of tiny seedlings have already sprouted and developed. They usually start developing even under the snow, and some of them even over winter. So each of those little plants will become a massive, like half a meter size of basal rosette of the leaves. So we are digging those up and planting them out around the garden, and we use them for chop and drop mulch as well as ground cover. You can see that those more developed plants, they have overwintered, and they have much bigger hairy leaves due to the lower temperatures in winter. And those are perfect size for planting out and using as a living mulch. So that was all for today, folks. I'm leaving you with this shot of our small young apricot tree, which is now blooming. It's a lovely sight and a great aroma in the garden, and I'll see you in the next one.